A single dad stepped between a terrified waitress and a powerful man in a midnight diner, never realizing the woman he was protecting was a CEO hiding behind a $5 name tag. Outside, rain hammered the windows. Inside, everyone looked away. Ethan Walker had every reason to stay seated. His daughter was asleep at home. Rent was due. His next shift started in less than an hour. One bad decision could cost him everything. Then the waitress whispered, "Let go of me," for the third time. Ethan slowly set down his coffee. What happened next would destroy his reputation, threaten his family, and pull him into a world of money secrets and a woman who would change his life forever. Stay with this story because it's about what courage really costs when doing the right thing has consequences. And before we begin, like the video and tell me in the comments what city or state you're watching from. 12 hours before Ethan Walker set down that cup of coffee and stood up for a woman he barely knew, his day began the way most of his days did. Too early. The alarm went off at 5:12 in the morning inside a narrow two-bedroom duplex on the west side of Columbus, Ohio. Ethan opened his eyes before the second vibration. For a few seconds he stayed still beneath the thin blanket and listened. The furnace clicked somewhere behind the wall. A truck rolled through the wet street outside. From the bedroom across the hall came the soft rhythm of his daughter breathing. That sound was enough to make him move. He sat up slowly. His right knee protested immediately. Ethan pressed a palm against it and waited for the ache to settle. Cold weather always made it worse. So did working 14 hours the day before. He stood anyway. By 5:20 the kitchen light was on. By 5:24 bread was in the toaster. By 5:27 Ethan was standing over the stove trying to make scrambled eggs while reading a note from Lucy's teacher about an upcoming science project. The note contained the words, "Parent participation strongly encouraged." Ethan stared at those words for a moment. Then he looked at the calendar taped to the refrigerator. Almost every square was filled. Delivery shift, repair job, security shift, doctor appointment, school conference, Lucy art class, grocery day. There was barely enough white space left to see the paper underneath. A sleepy voice came from the hallway. "Dad!" Ethan turned. Lucy Walker stood there in purple pajamas, one sock on one sock, missing her brown hair tangled around her face. She held a cardboard volcano in both hands. The thing leaned slightly to one side. Ethan studied it. Lucy studied him. "Be honest," she said. "I am always honest." That was not an answer. Ethan crouched in front of the volcano. There were red streaks of paint running down the sides and a large crack near the top where the cardboard had folded. He nodded thoughtfully. "It looks dangerous." Lucy's eyes narrowed. "It looks like mashed potatoes. Angry mashed potatoes." She tried not to laugh. She failed. Ethan smiled. That sound did something to him every time. It reached places nothing else could reach. "Can you fix it?" He looked at the clock. He needed to leave in 43 minutes. "Yeah, really?" "No." Lucy blinked. Ethan took the volcano from her. "But we can make it look like it was supposed to be this way." She followed him to the kitchen table. "Is that the same thing? Most adults survive by pretending it is." Lucy sat down while Ethan found tape glue and an old cereal box. He repaired one side of the volcano while flipping eggs with the other hand. The toaster popped. Lucy jumped. Ethan did not. Some reactions never left you. He carried breakfast to the table. Lucy looked at his plate. "You only made eggs for me. I'm not hungry." "You said that yesterday." "I wasn't hungry yesterday either." She looked toward the refrigerator. There was not much inside. Milk, eggs, half a bag of apples, cheese, 2 containers from Sunday dinner. Lucy was 8 years old. She noticed more than Ethan wished she did. She pushed half her toast toward him. "Then just eat this." Ethan looked at her. "I'm your father." "I know. I provide the toast. You can still eat it." He took the piece. "Bossy. You raised me." That earned another smile. After breakfast, Ethan tried to braid her hair. He was terrible at it. He had been terrible at it for 3 years. Lucy sat patiently between his knees while he worked. After 30 seconds, she reached behind her head. "Dad." "What?" "You're doing the weird thing again." "What weird thing?" "The part where one side looks like a rope and the other side looks like you gave up." Ethan examined his work in the reflection of the microwave. That seems unfair. Lucy took the hair tie from his fingers. I'll fix it. You wound me. You'll recover. She was right. He usually did. By 6:08 they were outside. The November air bit through Ethan's jacket. The pavement was still dark from rain. Lucy carried her repaired Volcano carefully to Ethan's aging pickup. Before she climbed in, she stopped. Ethan had bent slightly to rub his knee. Does it hurt today? He straightened. Only when I'm awake. Lucy frowned. That's most of the time. Exactly. She opened the passenger door. You should sleep more. You sound like Mrs. Alvarez. She is smart. She also cheats at cards. That doesn't make her wrong. Ethan shook his head and helped Lucy buckle in. The drive to school took 17 minutes. Lucy spent 12 of them explaining how volcanoes worked. Ethan listened like she was giving testimony before Congress. When they pulled into the school drop-off lane, Lucy reached for the handle, then stopped. Friday. Ethan looked over. What about Friday? Mom's birthday. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, only slightly. Lucy noticed. She always noticed. I remember, he said. Can we take flowers? Of course. Yellow ones. Ethan nodded. Yellow ones. Sarah had loved yellow flowers. Daisies especially. She used to say roses tried too hard. Lucy opened the truck door. Love you. Love you more. Impossible. Go to school. She smiled and ran toward the entrance, carrying the crooked volcano against her chest. Ethan waited until she disappeared through the doors. Only then did he pull away. His first job started at 7. For 6 hours, Ethan delivered construction materials around Columbus. Drywall, cabinet hardware, boxes of tile, plumbing fixtures. The work was not complicated, but it punished the body. Lift, carry, drive, unload, repeat. At 9:40, Ethan delivered 20 boxes of flooring to a renovation crew near German Village. At 10:25, he carried bathroom fixtures up 3 flights because the service elevator was broken. At 11:10, his knee began throbbing badly enough that he swallowed 2 painkillers with cold coffee. At noon, his supervisor called. Walker, you available Saturday? Ethan leaned against the truck. What time? 6 to 3. He had already promised Lucy they would visit Sarah's grave that morning. What about Sunday? Need Saturday. Ethan looked through the windshield. He could almost hear Sarah's voice. You cannot work every hour of every day. Bills did not care what Sarah used to say. I can do Saturday. Good man. The call ended. Ethan stared at the phone. Then he opened his calendar and moved the cemetery visit to Sunday. Again. At 1:30, his delivery shift ended. At 1:47, he was driving across town to replace a leaking kitchen faucet in one of the apartment buildings managed by a landlord named Carl Jennings. Carl paid cash, not much. But Cash did not ask questions. The tenant was an elderly woman named Mrs. Graham. She hovered in the kitchen while Ethan worked beneath the sink. My son said I should just call the management office. You did. They told me Monday. Ethan tightened a fitting. It would have been a swimming pool by Monday. She smiled. You're a good man, Mr. Walker. Ethan slid out from beneath the sink. I'm a man who knows what water damage costs. She laughed. When he finished, she tried to tip him $20. Ethan refused twice. She put the bill into his jacket pocket anyway. He discovered it in the parking lot. He considered walking back. Then his phone buzzed. A voicemail from his landlord. Rent would increase in January. Not by much, the message said. $65. Ethan replayed that part once. Not by much. He sat behind the wheel and looked at the $20 bill. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his wallet. At 3:06, he stopped at a gas station. He picked up a turkey sandwich, checked the price, put it back. He bought a banana and a black coffee instead. Then just before reaching the register, he saw a small carton of strawberries. Lucy loved strawberries. They were too expensive for November. Ethan stared at them, then dropped them into the basket. His total came to $9.86. He paid. Back in the truck, he ate the banana while driving. The strawberries stayed unopened beside him. By 4, Ethan was home. He had exactly 3 hours before he needed to leave for his overnight security shift. Lucy came through the door 10 minutes later with Mrs. Alvarez. Mrs. Alvarez lived next door and had somehow become part babysitter, part grandmother, part unpaid commander of Ethan's household. She pointed at him as soon as she entered. "You look terrible. Good afternoon to you, too. You are too thin. I'm 200 pounds. Then your face is too thin. That makes more sense." She handed him Lucy's backpack. "I made soup." "You didn't have to." "I know." She walked out before he could argue. Lucy dropped her backpack and opened the refrigerator. She saw the strawberries. Her face changed immediately. "You got these?" "No, they broke in." She hugged him around the waist. Ethan looked down at the top of her head. For $5, the reaction felt almost criminally cheap. They ate dinner together at the kitchen table, soup from Mrs. Alvarez, bread, strawberries cut into halves. Lucy told him her volcano had survived school. Ethan told her he was proud of the volcano. She told him he should be proud of her instead. He agreed that was probably more reasonable. At 6:15, Lucy went to her room to finish homework. Ethan cleaned the kitchen. Above the sink sat a framed photograph. Sarah stood in the center of it, smiling at the camera, one hand around Ethan, the other around a much younger Lucy. Sarah's hair was longer then, before hospitals, before treatment, before Ethan learned how many kinds of silence existed inside a room where someone you loved was dying. He reached beneath his shirt. His wedding ring hung from a simple chain around his neck. He held it for a second, then released it. "Dad." He turned. Lucy stood in the doorway holding her math book. "You okay?" Ethan picked up a plate. "Yeah." She glanced at the photograph, then back at him. She did not ask anything else. "Need help?" "Fractions." He grimaced. "Now I'm not okay." Across town, another person was preparing for work. The apartment Claire Whitmore had rented was smaller than the guest suite in her father's house. That was intentional. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, tying her hair into a simple ponytail. No stylist, no assistant, no tailored suit. She wore black pants, comfortable shoes, and the pale blue uniform of Maple Street Diner. A plastic name tag was pinned above her chest. Maya Reed. Claire studied her reflection. 3 months ago, seeing herself dressed this way had felt almost ridiculous. Now it felt strangely normal. Her real life felt farther away. That life had conference rooms 30 floors above the city, drivers waiting at curbs, private elevators, people who stood when she entered rooms. Her name was Claire Whitmore. At 30, she was the chief executive of Whitmore Systems, one of the largest workplace software and logistics technology companies in the region. The company built scheduling platforms, inventory systems, warehouse tracking tools, employee safety software, and digital management systems used by thousands of businesses. Her father, Daniel Whitmore, had founded it more than 30 years earlier. Claire had inherited access. She had not inherited credibility, at least not automatically. She knew what some investors called her when she was not in the room. The daughter, the heiress, Daniel's experiment. A woman who had moved too quickly because her last name opened doors other people spent decades pushing against. Some of that criticism was unfair. Some of it was not. Claire had graduated near the top of her class. She had worked inside 3 divisions before taking the executive role. She had helped redesign one of Whitmore's most profitable platforms. She knew the products. She knew the numbers. But 18 months into the job, she had started noticing something that bothered her. The more senior the meeting, the less anyone seemed to know about the people actually using the things they built. One afternoon, a group of executives spent 40 minutes discussing worker efficiency in distribution centers. Charts covered an entire wall, average scan time, shift productivity, output per labor hour. One executive complained that workers were taking too long to log safety concerns. Claire had asked a simple question. "When was the last time any of us worked a full warehouse shift?" The room went quiet. Someone laughed because they thought she was joking. Claire was not. 2 weeks later, she proposed leaving headquarters for several months. Not as Claire Whitmore. As nobody. Her father had stared at her across his study. "You want to work in a diner?" "I want to work where our customers work. We have research teams. Research teams send reports. We have surveys. People lie on surveys." Daniel leaned back. "And they tell the truth to waitresses. Sometimes they forget waitresses are listening. That answer had ended the argument for almost 10 seconds. Then Daniel started another one. Eventually, they reached an agreement. Claire could do it, but there would be conditions. One of those conditions now sat clipped inside the inner seam of her apron. A device no larger than a car key, Beacon, a workplace safety prototype being developed by Whitmore's research group. The system could detect sharp changes in movement, raised voices, distress phrases, and sudden impact. When triggered, it stored encrypted audio around the event. Claire was supposed to test whether the device felt intrusive during ordinary work. So far, most of the recordings contained dropped plates, shouting cooks, and customers arguing about football. She had nearly forgotten it was there. Her phone buzzed. "Cole Ramirez," Claire answered. "You checking on me or the device?" "Both." Cole headed corporate security for Whitmore. He distrusted the entire arrangement. "Any problems?" "Someone sent back pancakes because they were too round." "That sounds serious." "I survived. Your father wants you at headquarters tomorrow morning." "I have a shift." "Claire." "Cole." He sighed. "You enjoy making my job difficult. That is not why I do it." "I know, that makes it worse." Claire smiled. "I'll call him after work." She hung up and grabbed her coat. At Maple Street Diner, she became Maya again. The transition took less effort each week. The diner sat near a cluster of warehouses, repair garages, and trucking lots. Its red sign flickered on cold nights. The coffee was stronger than it needed to be. The booths had cracks in the vinyl. The same men often sat in the same seats at the same times. Claire had learned more there than she expected. She had watched an older waitress struggle with a payment screen because the text was too small. She had watched a delivery driver curse a handheld scanner that required 4 steps to correct one simple mistake. She had seen a cook lose his preferred shift because an automated scheduling system treated school pickup as an inconvenience instead of a fixed responsibility. She wrote these things in a small notebook. Real problems rarely arrived labeled as product insights. They arrived as frustration, fatigue, workarounds. People adapting themselves to badly designed systems because no one had bothered designing the systems around people. Ethan had noticed the notebook. He noticed more than most customers. He never asked too much. That was one reason Claire liked talking to him. He usually arrived late at night between jobs. Black coffee, sometimes pie if Lucy had apparently decided he was too thin. Claire knew about Lucy long before she met her. Ethan mentioned his daughter constantly without realizing he did it. Her science project, her spelling test, her art class, her hatred of peas, her belief that Pluto deserved to remain a planet. One night, Claire refilled his coffee and noticed a children's astronomy book open beside his elbow. Interesting reading for midnight. Ethan looked down. "Lucy has a test." "So you have a test?" He nodded. "That's how parenting works." Claire leaned against the empty booth across from him. "What's the largest planet?" "Jupiter. Closest planet to the sun." "Mercury. Why is Pluto not a planet?" Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Political corruption." Claire laughed. He looked faintly pleased with himself. For Claire, moments like that were unexpectedly precious. Ethan never asked where she had gone to school, never asked whether she had a boyfriend, never tried to impress her, never looked at her as if she could improve his life. To him, she was simply Maya, a waitress who kept the coffee warm. That simplicity felt almost luxurious. On Thursday night, the rain began just after 10. By midnight, Maple Street Diner was nearly empty. Claire wiped down the counter. Frank Dawson, a truck driver she recognized, sat near the window with a newspaper. 2 nurses shared fries after a long shift. Ethan sat in his usual booth near the back. His jacket was damp at the shoulders. He looked exhausted. Claire approached with the coffee pot. "Long day." Ethan glanced at her. "They're all 24 hours. Very philosophical." "I'm too tired to be philosophical." She refilled his cup. "You working after this?" "Security." "What time?" 2. Claire looked at the clock. "You know normal people sleep at night." "I've heard rumors." She smiled. Ethan's phone lit up on the table. Lucy had sent a picture, a badly repaired cardboard volcano. Across the bottom she had written, "It lived." Claire laughed. "That yours?" "Half mine, half hers." "Which half?" "The structurally questionable part." Claire shook her head and walked back toward the counter. The bell above the diner door rang. 3 men entered from the rain. Claire looked up automatically. The man in front removed his coat and handed it to one of the others without even turning around. Expensive charcoal suit, silver watch, confident smile. Claire knew him. Preston Vale, private equity executive, investor. A man whose firm controlled significant stakes in several companies that did business with Whitmore Systems. Claire had sat across from him at dinners. He had complimented her leadership. He had praised her intelligence. He had once raised a glass to Daniel Whitmore and called Claire the future of American enterprise. Preston looked directly at her now. There was no recognition in his face. None. His eyes moved over the uniform, the name tag, the apron. To Preston Vale, Claire Whitmore had disappeared. Only Maya Reed remained, a waitress in a nearly empty diner after midnight. Claire picked up her order pad. Preston slid into booth 7. His 2 companions sat across from him. Claire approached. "Evening. What can I get you?" Preston barely looked up. "Coffee." "Sure. Fresh." Claire nodded. "Anything else?" Now he looked at her. His gaze stayed a little too long. "Maybe." Claire felt something inside her tighten. She had seen Preston in conference rooms full of powerful people. She had never seen this version of him. Behind her, Ethan lifted his coffee cup. Rain struck the diner windows. Claire wrote down the order even though there was nothing to remember. "Coffee, black." She turned toward the counter. Preston Vale's hand closed around Claire's wrist. For half a second she did not react. Not because she was afraid, because she was stunned. She had seen this man speak at charity dinners. She had watched him shake hands with governors, executives, investors, and reporters. She had heard him talk about workplace dignity during a panel discussion in Chicago. Now his fingers were digging into her skin. Not Claire Whitmore's skin, Maya Reed's. That difference seemed to matter to him. Claire pulled once, his grip tightened. "Sir, let go of me." Preston smiled as if she had misunderstood something amusing. "Relax." His voice was low enough to sound intimate. That made it worse. "I'm just talking to you." "You can talk without holding me." One of his companions, a large man named Grant Mercer, looked down at the table. The younger one, Owen Price, stared toward the front window. Neither man said anything. Claire pulled again. Preston leaned closer. "What's the rush?" "I'm working." "So work." His thumb pressed against the inside of her wrist. "Sit with us for a minute." "No." The word was sharper now. Preston's smile faded slightly. "No." Claire looked him directly in the eye. "Let go of me." At the back of the diner, Ethan lowered his coffee cup. He had been watching since Preston first reached for her. He had also been listening. That mattered. There was a difference between misunderstanding a moment and watching someone ignore a clear boundary 3 times. Ethan knew that difference. He also knew trouble when he saw it. His overnight shift started in less than 40 minutes. If he was late again, his supervisor would notice. If the police became involved, the explanation would take hours. If there was a fight, even a small one, there would be reports, names, questions, maybe background checks, maybe worse. He thought about Lucy asleep next door to Mrs. Alvarez. He thought about the rent increase, the repair work he had lined up for Saturday, the groceries sitting in his refrigerator. His body told him to stay seated. His life told him to stay seated. Then Claire said it again. "You're hurting me." Preston replied quietly. "Then stop fighting me." Ethan set the cup down. The sound was soft, ceramic touching ceramic. Frank Dawson heard it from the corner. He looked up from his newspaper. Ethan stood. Claire saw him approaching before Preston did. He did not move like someone looking for a fight. There was no anger in his face, no chest puffed forward, no clenched fists. He simply crossed the floor. 4 steps. 5. Then he stopped beside booth 7. "She asked you to let go." Preston turned his head slowly. For the first time that night, he really looked at Ethan. Old work jacket, faded jeans, scuffed boots, hands rough from years of physical labor. The assessment lasted less than a second. Preston dismissed him. "Go finish your coffee." Ethan looked at Claire's wrist. The skin around Preston's fingers was already red. "Take your hand off her." Grant shifted in his seat. Owen looked toward the door. Preston gave Ethan a tired smile. You know what your problem is? Ethan said nothing. You people always think somebody else's business belongs to you. Ethan's expression did not change. She made it your business when she asked you to stop. Preston's smile disappeared. You deaf? No. Then leave. Ethan stayed where he was. Claire could feel Preston's grip changing, not loosening, changing. He was no longer holding her because he wanted her attention. He was holding her because Ethan had told him not to. Claire understood men like Preston. She had grown up around different versions of them. Their confidence depended on the assumption that resistance had a price and they could always afford more than the other person. Ethan spoke again, quietly. Last time. Preston stared at him. Let her go. Grant pushed away from the booth. All right. That's enough. Ethan's eyes shifted toward him. Grant stood. He was taller than Ethan by an inch, and heavier by at least 30 pounds. He reached for Ethan's shoulder. That was his mistake. Ethan moved before Grant's hand arrived. His left foot turned. His body shifted. One hand caught Grant's wrist. The other controlled the elbow. A short turn redirected Grant's weight toward the table. Grant hit the laminate surface chest first. Cups jumped. Silverware rattled. Owen jerked backward. Frank lowered his newspaper completely. Ethan pinned Grant's arm behind him. There was force in the hold, but no panic, no unnecessary movement. Stay still, Grant cursed. You broke my arm. No. Ethan tightened the position by less than an inch. Grant went silent. You'll know if I do. Claire felt Preston's fingers release. She stepped backward immediately. Her free hand closed around her wrist. Ethan glanced at her. You okay? Claire nodded once. She was not sure whether that was true. Preston stood. His face had gone red. You just assaulted him. Ethan looked at Grant, then at Preston. He tried to grab me. You think that matters? Usually. Preston pulled out his phone. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Ethan released Grant and stepped back. Grant straightened, clutching his shoulder. Ethan made no move toward him. That detail would matter later. Probably not, Ethan said. Preston stepped closer. I can ruin you. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Preston continued. I can make one call and people like you stop getting hired. You understand me? Ethan looked at him for a long moment. People like me. Men who confuse violence with importance. Something moved behind Ethan's eyes. Claire saw it. Not anger exactly. A door opening somewhere old, somewhere dangerous. Then Ethan breathed in slowly. The door closed. I didn't hit anybody. You attacked my associate. He touched me after I told you to release her. You think anyone is going to believe that? That question hung in the diner. Frank looked down. The cook had stopped pretending not to listen. Claire stepped forward. I will. Preston looked at her. For a moment, something in her voice almost triggered recognition. Not her face, not the uniform, her authority. Then it disappeared. He pointed toward her. You should think very carefully before getting involved. Claire stared at him. I am involved. Red and blue light flashed across the windows. Someone had called the police. Nobody admitted who. The first officer entered with one hand near his belt. A second followed. Everybody stay where you are. Preston's posture changed instantly. Claire watched it happen. His shoulders relaxed, his voice lowered. The drunk man vanished. The executive returned. Officer, thank God. Ethan almost smiled. The officer looked between them. What happened? Preston answered before anyone else could speak. This man attacked my colleague without provocation. Claire said, That's not what happened. Preston ignored her. We were sitting here having coffee. He walked over and assaulted Grant. Grant nodded. My shoulder's killing me. Owen said nothing. The officer turned to Claire. Ma'am. She raised her wrist. He grabbed me. The officer saw the marks. Who? Claire pointed at Preston. He did. Preston sighed. We were talking. She became upset. This guy decided to play hero. Claire's jaw tightened. I told you to let go 3 times. You're exaggerating. No. Preston looked at the officer. She's emotional. Claire nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, because she had heard powerful men use that word too many times. Emotional, a word designed to make a woman's memory sound less reliable than a man's confidence. The officer separated them. Another patrol car arrived. Statements were taken. The security camera above the register should have ended the argument. It did not. The camera was old. The angle was poor. A bright reflection from the diner's sign washed across the booth. The moment Preston first grabbed Claire was almost invisible. The later struggle was much clearer. Ethan controlling Grant. Grant bent over the table, Preston stepping back. Out of context, it looked bad. Lieutenant Mason Reed arrived 20 minutes later. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered, tired-eyed, and completely unimpressed by anyone's bank account. He listened to Claire, then Frank, then the cook. Frank admitted he saw Preston holding Claire. The cook said he heard her tell someone to stop. Neither had seen every second. Mason looked at Ethan. "You have identification," Ethan handed it over. Mason studied the name. "Ethan Walker." "Yes." "Army." "Used to be." Mason looked at him again. Something like recognition crossed his face. "You work security near Fisher Road?" "Some nights." Mason nodded slowly. "Any weapons on you?" "No." "Any alcohol?" "Coffee." Mason almost smiled. Then Preston's attorney arrived. Claire did not understand how someone could get an attorney to a diner at nearly 2 in the morning so quickly. Then she remembered who Preston was. The man introduced himself as Charles Benton. Perfect suit, perfect coat, perfectly calm voice. He spoke to the officers about assault liability, bodily injury, and immediate charges. Mason listened for less than a minute, then raised one hand. "Counselor, I haven't finished taking statements. My client intends to press charges." "Good for your client." Charles's expression tightened. Mason turned toward Ethan. "Mr. Walker, I need you to come downtown so we can sort this out." Ethan nodded. Then he looked at the clock. 1:46. His shift had already started. "Can I make a call?" Mason nodded. Ethan stepped near the window and dialed Mrs. Alvarez. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Ethan." "Sorry." Her voice changed immediately. "What happened?" "I'm okay." "That is not what I asked. There was a problem at the diner." "Police." Ethan closed his eyes. "Yeah." Mrs. Alvarez sighed. "I have Lucy. Do what you need to do." "Thank you." He was about to hang up when he heard movement. Then Lucy's voice. "Dad." Ethan looked down. "Hey, Bug. Why are you calling so late? I might be home later than I thought. Are you working?" "Not exactly." A pause. Lucy knew his voice. "What happened?" Ethan looked through the glass. Claire stood beside the counter, one hand around her wrist. "I had to help somebody." "Was somebody hurt?" "Not badly." "Was she scared?" Ethan looked at Claire again. "Yeah." Lucy was quiet for several seconds. Then she said, "Then you did the right thing." Ethan swallowed. "Go back to sleep." "Okay. I love you. Love you more." The call ended. Ethan pressed his forehead briefly against the cold window. When he turned, Claire was looking at him. Their eyes met. She had heard enough to understand. He had a daughter, a child waiting at home while he dealt with police because he had chosen to help a stranger. Claire felt guilt settle in her stomach. Ethan walked past her. She touched his sleeve lightly. "I'm sorry." He looked at her. "For what?" "This." Ethan glanced toward Preston. "That's not yours." The officer guided Ethan toward the door. Claire watched him disappear into the rain. At the station, Charles Benton continued pressing for charges. Preston sat in a chair drinking bottled water as if he were waiting for a delayed flight. Ethan sat across the room. No coffee now. No phone. Just fluorescent lights and paperwork. At 2:31, a woman entered carrying an overstuffed leather bag. She was about 5'6", dark-haired, wearing a navy blazer over jeans. She walked straight toward the front desk. "I'm here for Ethan Walker." Ethan looked up. She crossed the room and held out her hand. "Rachel Torres." He shook it. "Do I know you?" "No." "Then why are you here?" Because someone called the Veteran Legal Assistance line and described your situation. Ethan frowned. Who? Rachel looked toward the paperwork. Anonymous. Across town, Claire sat alone inside her rented apartment with her phone on the table. She had made the call. Rachel took Ethan into a private room. Tell me everything from the beginning. He did. She interrupted twice, once to clarify where Grant was standing, once to ask exactly how many times Claire told Preston to release her. 3 that I heard. And you told him to let her go before touching anyone? Yes. Did you threaten him? No. Did you strike anyone? No. Did Grant reach for you first? Yes. Rachel leaned back. Good. Ethan looked at her. Good. Legally. She closed the notebook. Publicly, we may have a different problem. He did not understand what she meant. He understood 6 hours later. Ethan left the station shortly after 4. No formal charge had been filed yet. The investigation would continue. He called his security supervisor from the parking lot. No answer. He drove directly to the warehouse anyway. His shift ended at 6. He arrived at 4:37. The supervisor stared at him. Where the hell have you been? Police station. The man's face changed. Ethan explained just enough. The supervisor rubbed both hands over his face. Walker, I can't put you on the floor tonight. Why? Because I don't know what happened. I just told you. You told me your version. Ethan looked at him. My version. Go home. We'll talk tomorrow. Ethan stood there for a moment, then picked up his bag and left. By 7, he was back at the duplex. Lucy was still asleep. Mrs. Alvarez had left coffee on the counter. Ethan sat at the kitchen table without drinking it. He had been awake for 26 hours. He should have slept. Instead, his phone vibrated. A message from a coworker. You seen this? There was a link. Ethan opened it. A video filled the screen. 17 seconds. No beginning. No Claire telling Preston to let go. No Preston gripping her wrist. No warning. No Grant reaching for Ethan. The clip began with Ethan twisting Grant's arm. Grant hit the table. Someone behind the camera gasped. The frame shook. Then Ethan's voice. Stay still. The video ended. The caption read, Former soldier attacks finance executive during late-night diner confrontation. Ethan watched it twice. Then a third time. Not because he did not understand it. Because he understood it perfectly. The camera had captured the truth. Just not enough of it. By 9, the clip had several thousand views. By noon, tens of thousands. By afternoon, a local television station had it. Ethan sat in the office of his delivery company while his supervisor avoided looking directly at him. We're taking you off the schedule. For how long? Until things calm down. You watched the video. Yes. Did you watch anything before the video? There isn't anything before it. Exactly. The supervisor sighed. Ethan, this isn't personal. Ethan stood. It feels pretty personal. His repair work vanished next. Carl Jennings called around 5. I've got tenants asking questions. About what? The video. You know me, Carl. I do. Then what's the problem? I have a business. Ethan looked around his kitchen. So do I. Carl was silent. I need a few weeks. Ethan ended the call. 3 jobs, almost gone. In less than 48 hours. Preston Vale's campaign had barely begun. By then, he knew who Maya Reed really was. His assistant called him at 8:15 Friday morning. Preston sat in the back seat of a black sedan, sunglasses covering his eyes. His head pounded. What? There's a problem. Be specific. The waitress. Preston removed the glasses. What about her? His assistant hesitated. She isn't a waitress. A photograph appeared on Preston's phone. Claire Whitmore speaking at a technology conference 6 months earlier. Preston stared at it. Then at another image. Claire wearing the diner uniform in a police evidence photograph. His stomach dropped. Jesus. He remembered her voice, her stare, the way something about her had seemed familiar. Does Daniel know? We don't know. Find out. Preston ended the call. For 10 seconds, fear filled the car. Then training took over. Fear was useless. Narrative was useful. If Claire spoke first, he was finished. If he spoke first, she would have to fight through his version. He called Charles Benton. Then his communications consultant. Then a private research firm. By lunch, someone had found Ethan's service history: Army Ranger, Afghanistan, combat injury, PTSD treatment. Then they found the arrest. 3 years earlier, 4 months after Sarah's death. Ethan drunk outside a bar, a fight, 1 night in custody. No conviction after completing counseling and anger management requirements. Context could make the incident understandable. So they removed the context. A grainy booking photograph appeared beside Ethan's diner video. The caption asked whether employers were ignoring warning signs in veterans with violent histories. Television commentators began discussing trauma. People who had never met Ethan discussed his mental stability. One host called the diner footage disturbing. Another asked why someone with a history of PTSD was working security. Ethan watched 10 seconds, then turned off the television. Lucy was standing behind him. He had not heard her enter. "That's you." Ethan put down the remote. "Yeah. They're saying you hurt that man. He wasn't hurt." "Then why are they saying it?" Ethan looked at his daughter. There was no answer simple enough for an 8-year-old. "Because they don't know everything." Lucy frowned. "Why don't they ask you?" Ethan looked away. The next afternoon he picked her up from school. A mother standing near the playground saw him. She placed one hand on her son's shoulder and moved him toward the opposite gate. Lucy saw it. Her face changed. On the drive home, she stared out the window. "Caleb's mom said he can't come over Saturday." Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Maybe they're busy." "He said they're not." Ethan did not speak. Lucy looked at him. "Is it because of the video?" He wanted to lie. For 1 second, he wanted to give her a world where adults were always fair. Then he remembered what Sarah used to say. "Do not teach her the world is safe. Teach her she can survive the truth." "Maybe." Lucy looked back out the window. "That's stupid." Ethan almost laughed. "Language. Stupid isn't a bad word. Depends who you ask." That night after Lucy went to bed, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table. Bills covered the surface. Rent, electricity, insurance, school fees, credit card. He calculated everything twice. Then a third time. Savings gave him maybe 6 weeks. 7 if he stopped paying something. He looked toward Lucy's bedroom. For the first time since the diner, doubt entered. Not about Preston, not about Claire. About himself. If he had stayed in that booth, he would still have 3 jobs. Lucy would still have friends coming over. No one would be talking about PTSD on television. No one would be looking at him differently. He pressed both hands flat against the table. Then another image entered his mind. Lucy, older, standing beside a booth. Someone's hand around her wrist. Her saying no. A room full of people looking away because helping her might become inconvenient. Ethan closed his eyes. His voice was barely audible. "I'd still stand up." Across the city, Claire Whitmore sat inside a conference room at Whitmore Systems. She had returned to headquarters for the first time since the incident. The Maya Reed name tag rested on the table in front of her. Nina Whitmore, her cousin and head of communications, stood near the window holding a tablet. The video passed 200,000 views this morning. Claire looked at the screen. Ethan's face. Grant hitting the table, the false caption. What about his jobs? Nina hesitated. Security suspended him. Delivery removed him. The repair company stopped using him. Claire stared at her. "All 3, yes." Claire's expression hardened. Nina continued. "There's more." She placed several photographs on the table. Ethan outside his duplex. Ethan walking toward Lucy's school. Lucy getting out of his truck. One photograph showed Lucy carrying her cardboard volcano. Claire stopped breathing for a moment. Where did these come from? Accounts linked to people who have worked with a private investigation company Preston uses. Claire touched the edge of the photograph. He had someone follow his daughter. "We can't prove Preston ordered it yet." Claire looked up. "But you believe he did?" "Yes." The conference room door opened. Daniel Whitmore entered. He did not sit. "This ends now." Claire looked at him. Daniel pointed toward the Maya name tag. The diner, the anonymous apartment, this entire experiment. Claire said nothing. "You were assaulted by a man with business ties to this company. Our lawyers will handle it. Cole will take over your security. You are not going back there." Claire looked at the photographs again. Ethan, Lucy. A father and daughter being dragged into a war they never asked for. Her father continued speaking. Claire barely heard him. She thought about Ethan in the diner, his coffee cooling behind him, his exhausted face, the picture of Lucy lighting his phone. He had known nothing about Claire, nothing about Whitmore Systems, nothing about her money. He had looked at a frightened waitress and decided that was enough. Claire picked up the plastic name tag. Maya Reed. For 3 months, that name had given her permission to disappear, to observe, to listen, to experience a world where no one cared who her father was. Now hiding behind it felt different. It felt like cowardice. Claire removed the pin from the back, set the name tag on the table, then looked at Daniel. No. Her father stopped. Claire slid the photographs of Ethan and Lucy toward him. He stood up when he had every reason not to. Daniel's eyes moved toward the images. Claire's voice remained calm. So I'm not disappearing while someone destroys his life for it. Daniel Whitmore looked at his daughter for several seconds without speaking. Claire had seen that expression before. It usually appeared in boardrooms just before someone lost an argument they did not yet realize they were having. This time, she was not interested in winning. She was interested in being heard. Daniel picked up one of the photographs. Lucy Walker stood beside Ethan's truck, wearing a purple coat, her cardboard volcano tucked under one arm. How old is she? 8. Daniel placed the photograph back on the table. And you believe Preston ordered this? I believe people connected to him are trying to scare Ethan. Belief is not evidence. Claire looked at him. Then we find evidence. Daniel's jaw tightened. Claire, this is exactly why I told you the diner was reckless. And if I had stayed in my office, Preston would still be the same man. That does not make your decision safe. No. She glanced down at the red marks still faintly visible around her wrist. It made it useful. Daniel's expression changed at that. Not agreement. Something closer to pain. He rarely looked at Claire as if she were still his daughter. Most days he looked at her as a chief executive, a successor, a responsibility. Now for 1 second he looked like a father who had almost failed to protect his child. I can make this disappear, he said quietly. Claire shook her head. That is the problem. Daniel frowned. What is? You always want to make things disappear. She touched the photographs. Preston is counting on that. Quiet settlement, private apology, no headlines, no damage to Whitmore. Daniel said nothing. Claire continued. He knows our world. He knows how people with money solve embarrassing problems. And your solution, the truth. Daniel almost smiled. Not because he found it funny, because he found it naive. The truth is not a strategy. It should be. In business it rarely is. Claire leaned back. Then maybe that is why men like Preston keep winning. The room went still. Daniel looked toward Nina. Leave us. Nina gathered her tablet and walked out. Claire expected another argument. Instead, Daniel sat down. What do you need? Claire answered immediately. Time. For what? To help Ethan build a case that does not depend on my name. Daniel studied her. You could end this with one press conference. I could end the headlines. She shook her head. I cannot give him back what they already took. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Be careful. About what? Confusing guilt with responsibility. Claire thought about Ethan standing between Preston and the booth. I know the difference. Across town, Ethan was learning how quickly dignity could become expensive. Rachel Torres sat at his kitchen table with a folder open in front of her. Lucy was at Mrs. Alvarez's apartment next door. The television was off. Ethan had stopped watching coverage about himself. Rachel slid a document across the table. Settlement offer. Ethan looked at the first page. From Preston, his attorneys. How much? $75,000. Ethan stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. $75,000. He thought about rent. He thought about groceries. He thought about the truck that made a noise every time he turned left. He thought about Lucy's art class. Rachel watched his face. That is enough money to change things. Ethan kept reading. What do they want? Confidentiality. No interviews, no public statements, no cooperation with reporters. He turned the page. And this, Rachel leaned forward, You acknowledge that the incident resulted from mutual misunderstanding. Ethan looked up. Mutual. That is the word they used. They grabbed her. I know. They threatened me. I know. They followed my kid. We are still proving that. Ethan pushed the agreement away. Rachel did not touch it. You should think before you answer. I did. You looked at it for 10 seconds. That was enough. Ethan. He stood and walked toward the kitchen counter. Rachel remained seated. You have almost no income. I know. You have maybe 6 weeks of savings. I know. You have a daughter. He turned. I know. Rachel held his gaze. Then understand what you are rejecting. Ethan looked toward the refrigerator. Lucy had taped a drawing beside the calendar. 2 stick figures stood under a yellow sun. One was tall, one was small. Above them, in purple crayon, Lucy had written, Dad and me. Ethan faced Rachel again. If I sign that, what do I tell her? You tell her you made the best decision you could. No. His voice was quiet. I tell her the truth does not matter if somebody offers enough money. Rachel leaned back. There was no judgment in her face, only calculation. All right. Ethan frowned. That's it. That's it. You aren't going to argue. I needed to know whether you were hesitating. I was. Rachel nodded. Good. Good. People who do not hesitate scare me. She closed the folder. Now we stop reacting and start building. A knock came at the door. Ethan looked toward it. Rachel did not seem surprised. You expecting someone? Yes. Who? Your waitress. Ethan stared at her. Rachel smiled slightly. Apparently she has another name. Ethan opened the door. Claire stood outside wearing jeans, a dark coat, and no trace of the pale blue diner uniform. For the first time, Ethan saw her as the woman appearing on every news report. Claire Whitmore, chief executive, daughter of Daniel Whitmore. A woman whose company employed thousands. She looked almost uncomfortable standing on his porch. That helped. Can I come in? Ethan stepped aside. Claire entered. Her eyes moved across the apartment, not judgmentally, carefully, the small couch, the photographs, the stack of school papers, the military shadow box on the wall, the refrigerator covered in Lucy's drawings. She stopped when she saw Sarah's photograph, then looked away before Ethan could notice she had looked too long. Rachel stood. I'll give you 2 a minute. Ethan glanced at her. You planned this. I plan most things. Rachel took the settlement folder with her and stepped outside. Claire remained near the kitchen. Ethan folded his arms. So, Claire took a breath. My name is Claire Whitmore. I gathered. I should have told you sooner. Before or after I got arrested, Claire absorbed that without defending herself. Before. Ethan looked at her. You work at a diner for fun. No. Sure looked like it. I was there because my company builds systems for people who work jobs we rarely understand. So you decided to become one of them? Yes. For a few months? Yes. And then you go home? Claire paused. Yes. Ethan looked toward the window. For some reason that answer bothered him more than he expected. For you that place was temporary. Claire's voice softened. I know. Do you? More than I did. He looked back at her. You could walk out of that diner at any point and be Claire Whitmore again. She said nothing. Frank cannot. The cook cannot. The waitress who covered your Tuesday shift cannot. Ethan's jaw tightened. I cannot walk away from my life when it gets hard. Claire nodded slowly. You're right. The agreement came so quickly that Ethan lost some of his anger. He had expected an argument. She gave him none. Claire continued. I thought understanding people meant experiencing what they experience. She glanced around the apartment. But I always had an exit. Ethan's expression eased slightly. Claire reached into her bag. I want to replace the income you lost. No, I knew you would say that. Then why ask? Because I had to. I do not want your money. You lost those jobs because you protected me. I lost them because Preston lied. I can still help. Ethan stepped closer. That is what people like you do, isn't it? Claire held his gaze. What? Fix things with money. Her face changed. Not anger. Recognition. Yes. The honesty caught him again. Claire looked toward Sarah's photograph. It is how I was raised. Ethan followed her eyes. My wife used to say money cannot fix anything important. Claire looked back. Was she right? Most of the time. A small silence passed between them. Then Lucy's bedroom door opened. Ethan turned. Lucy stood in the hallway. He frowned. I thought you were with Mrs. Alvarez. I came back for my science notebook. Then she saw Claire. Her eyes widened. You are the waitress. Claire smiled. I was. Lucy stepped closer. Are you still a waitress? No. What are you now? Claire hesitated. Ethan answered. Apparently very important. Claire gave him a look. Lucy studied her. You look the same. Claire smiled again. That might be the nicest thing anyone has said to me all week. Lucy walked into the kitchen and opened a container on the counter. She held it out. Cookie. Claire looked inside. 3 misshapen chocolate chip cookies. Did you make these? Lucy nodded. Claire took one. Ethan said, Proceed carefully. Lucy glared at him. They are good. Claire bit into it. She chewed, then nodded seriously. Excellent. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Claire looked at him. Your daughter has courage. I respect that. Lucy smiled. The tension in the room loosened. Only slightly, but enough. The next several days changed the shape of the fight. Rachel began making calls. Not glamorous calls, not dramatic calls. Calls to people who did not want to talk. Former assistants, hotel workers, event staff, contractors, women whose names had appeared near Preston's companies over the years. Most said no. Some hung up. One cried before telling Rachel never to call again. Then Hannah Pierce agreed to meet. She was 32 and worked as a sales manager for a medical equipment company. They met in the back corner of a coffee shop. Hannah kept looking toward the door. Rachel sat across from her. Claire sat beside Rachel. Ethan stayed home. This was not his story to hear first. Hannah wrapped both hands around a paper cup. 3 years ago there was a conference in Cincinnati. Rachel nodded. Preston was there. Yes. Hannah looked down. He kept asking me to join him after dinner. I said no. Later he found me near the elevators. Her fingers tightened. He put his hand on my waist, then lower. Claire said nothing. Hannah continued. I pushed him away. What happened after? He texted me. Do you still have them? Hannah nodded. I save everything. Rachel looked at Claire. Hannah's voice became quieter. I complained to my company. What did they do? They told me Preston's firm was our largest investor. Rachel already knew the rest. They offered you money. Hannah laughed once. It was not a happy sound. They offered me $20,000 and called it a separation package. Did you sign? Yes. Claire looked at her. Why? Hannah's eyes filled. Because I had rent. Because my mother was sick. Because I was 29 and terrified. She looked at Claire directly. People always ask why women do not speak. Her mouth tightened. They should ask why speaking costs so much. Claire carried that sentence with her for the rest of the day. Frank Dawson made his decision 2 nights later. He was sitting at home eating dinner with his son when Ethan appeared on the local news again. The anchor described the diner incident as disputed. Frank's son looked at the television. You were there. Frank kept eating. I told you that. You saw it happen. Yeah. Then why are they saying nobody knows? Frank put down his fork. His son was 16, old enough to recognize avoidance, young enough to challenge it. Because people see things differently. His son looked at him. Did you? Frank said nothing. The next morning he walked into Rachel's office. I saw Preston grab her. Rachel gestured toward the chair. Start at the beginning. Frank did. He described Claire telling Preston to stop. 3 times. He described Ethan approaching calmly. He described Ethan giving Preston a chance to release her. Then he told Rachel something she did not know. I worked corrections for 11 years. Rachel looked up. Before trucking. Frank nodded. Walker did not attack that man. How sure are you? He controlled him. Difference. Big one. Frank leaned forward. If Walker wanted to hurt that guy, he would have. Across town. Claire sat in a laboratory with Cole Ramirez. On the table between them rested the beacon device from her apron. Cole connected it to an isolated computer. Do you remember when it triggered? No. It detected elevated voices around 117. Claire watched the waveform appear. Cole clicked the file. Static. The hum of the diner refrigerator. Silverware. Then Preston's voice. Claire became still. The recording continued. His invitation, her refusal, his grip could not be heard, but her words could. Let go of me. Again. You're hurting me. Then Ethan. She asked you to let go. Claire closed her eyes. She could hear everything. The warnings. Grant's standing. The table impact. Preston's threat. I can ruin you. The recording ended. Cole looked at her. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Claire reached for her phone. Rachel answered immediately. We have it. Have what? Everything. 2 hours later, Rachel sat in Claire's office listening to the same recording. When it ended, she remained silent. Then she played one section again. Preston's threat. I can make one call and people like you stop getting hired. Rachel leaned back. This clears, Ethan. Claire nodded. Rachel looked at her. And it creates another problem for Preston. What? He threatened to destroy Ethan's employment. She pointed toward the reports on the desk. Then Ethan lost every job within 48 hours. Claire understood. Rachel continued. If we can connect Preston or his people to the media, push the surveillance or the employer contacts, this stops looking like reputation management. What does it look like? Retaliation. Cole entered carrying another folder. We may have something. He placed photographs on the table, the same images of Lucy. Then another set. A man sitting inside a parked sedan across from Lucy's school. Cole pointed to the license plate. Vehicle is registered to a contractor used by Northlake Strategic. Rachel recognized the name. Private Intelligence. Cole nodded. Preston's firm has paid them before. Claire's face hardened. Can we prove he hired them this time? Not yet. The office door opened. Ethan walked in. Rachel had asked him to come. He saw Lucy's photograph immediately, then the parked car. His expression changed. Who is that? Cole answered carefully. We believe he was conducting surveillance. On my daughter. We are verifying it. Ethan stepped toward the table. On my daughter. Claire stood. Ethan. He looked at her. For the first time since she had met him, Claire saw real rage. Not controlled irritation. Not exhaustion. Rage. He reached for his coat. Rachel stood. Where are you going? To find Preston. Claire moved between Ethan and the door. No. His eyes locked on hers. Move. No. Claire. That is what he wants. Ethan laughed bitterly. He followed my kid. I know. You do not know. His voice rose. You do not know what it feels like to see some stranger taking pictures of your child because you made somebody angry. Claire did not move. You're right. Ethan stared at her. Then move. No. She stepped closer. Because if you go near him angry, he gets another video. Another headline. Another reason to call you unstable. Ethan's breathing was heavy. Claire lowered her voice. He already took your jobs. Do not give him your control, too. The words landed. Ethan looked away. His hands were shaking. He hated that. Claire noticed. She said nothing about it. He closed his eyes, breathed in, held it, released slowly. Again. When he opened his eyes, the rage was still there. But it belonged to him again. Claire stepped aside. Not because she expected him to leave, because she trusted him not to. Ethan looked at the photograph of Lucy one more time, then sat down. Rachel opened a fresh legal pad. Cole pulled out a chair. Claire returned to her seat. Nobody spoke about courage. Nobody needed to. And for the first time since the night at Maple Street Diner, Ethan was no longer standing alone against Preston Vale. Rachel clicked her pen. Let's start with Northlake Strategic. The name sat at the top of the legal pad like a doorway. For 3 days, Rachel Torres Cole Ramirez and Nina Whitmore pulled at every thread connected to it. Invoices, phone records, contract summaries, security logs, payment authorizations. Nothing dramatic happened at first. That was the frustrating part. Real evidence rarely arrived with music behind it. It arrived buried inside routine documents that someone had hoped nobody would ever read closely. Cole found the first break late Sunday night. North Lake Strategic had received a payment from a consulting company called Vantage Advisory. Vantage Advisory had no public employees, no website, no obvious offices, but one of its directors also served as outside counsel to Preston Vale's investment firm. Rachel stared at the corporate filing on her laptop. There. Cole leaned closer. That enough? Not yet. But it gets us closer. Claire stood near the window of the conference room. The city lights spread below her. From 30 floors up, Columbus looked peaceful. Traffic moved in thin, glowing lines. Office towers stood silent against the dark. It was strange how clean problems could look from a distance. She turned back toward the table. What do we need? Rachel answered without looking up. Proof that Vantage hired Northlake to monitor Ethan. And proof Preston directed Vantage. Exactly. Nina entered carrying 3 coffees. She placed one in front of Rachel, one in front of Cole, then looked at Claire. You already had 2. Claire frowned. Is that a rule now? It is after midnight. Claire accepted the water Nina handed her instead. Cole scrolled farther down the payment record. Wait. Rachel looked up. What? This invoice number. He opened another file, a consulting expense report from Preston's firm. The same number appeared. The description was vague. Reputation risk assessment? Client protection? Rachel smiled for the first time that night. Now we have a road. Claire looked at her. A road to what? Subpoena territory. The following morning, Rachel contacted Lieutenant Mason Reed. He had already opened a separate inquiry after seeing the photographs of Lucy. Witness intimidation was one thing. Surveillance of an 8-year-old connected to an active legal dispute was another. Mason listened while Rachel explained the corporate connections. Then he asked one question. Can your people preserve everything? Cole answered. Already done. Good. Mason paused. Do not contact Preston. Rachel looked across the table at Ethan. He sat with his hands folded. Calm again. Mason continued. Let him think he is still controlling this. Ethan nodded. Fine by me. That was easier to say than to live. Preston continued winning publicly. At least that was how it looked. Another television panel discussed Ethan's past. A columnist called the diner incident a warning about untreated trauma. An anonymous source described Ethan as volatile. That source had never met him. The word still spread. Ethan stopped checking his phone unless Lucy was at school. He stopped reading comments completely. But other people read them. Mrs. Alvarez read them. Rachel read them. Claire read too many. One evening, Claire found a post comparing Ethan's old booking photograph to a recent image of him leaving his apartment. The caption said, "Violence never changes." Claire stared at it until the words blurred. Then Ethan called. Not about the case. Lucy wants to know if your company makes robots. Claire blinked. What? Apparently this is urgent. In the background, Lucy shouted, Ask her if they have eyes. Claire smiled despite herself. We make warehouse robots. Do they have eyes? Some have cameras. Ethan repeated the answer. Lucy groaned. That is not the same thing. Claire heard Ethan laugh. The sound made something in her chest loosen. For 10 minutes they talked about nothing important. Robots, school, the fact that Ethan had burned grilled cheese. Claire asked how anyone could burn grilled cheese. Ethan asked how anyone could fail to boil pasta. Claire reminded him that happened once. He reminded her that smoke alarms did not care. Neither mentioned Preston. Neither mentioned court filings. When the call ended, Claire remained standing by her kitchen counter with the phone still in her hand. For the first time in days, she remembered that Ethan Walker was not a case. He was a man, a father, someone who told bad jokes when he was tired, someone who bought expensive strawberries and skipped lunch, someone who had entered her life before knowing anything about the life she came from. Across town, Ethan stared at his own phone for a second longer than necessary. Lucy watched him. You like her? Ethan looked over. What? You smiled after she hung up. I smile. Not like that. Ethan pointed toward her homework. Fractions. Lucy grinned and returned to the page. The Whitmore Systems quarterly board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Preston Vale had attended nearly every one for the past 4 years. His firm controlled major investments in companies tied to Whitmore's infrastructure network. He was not a Whitmore executive. He did not need to be. Influence did not require a title when enough money entered the room before you did. Preston arrived at headquarters at 8:42. His car stopped beneath the glass entrance. He stepped out wearing a dark navy suit, fresh haircut, perfect tie. No visible sign that police were looking into his private contractors. No visible sign that several women had begun speaking to Rachel Torres. No visible sign that the audio from Beacon existed. Confidence was one of Preston's greatest talents. Even when he did not possess it, he could perform it. Inside the elevator, Charles Benton stood beside him. "You heard anything from Daniel?" "No." "Claire?" "No." Charles frowned. "That worries me." Preston adjusted his cuff. "It means they are protecting the company, or preparing something. They have more to lose than I do." Charles looked at him. "Do they—" Preston did not answer. The doors opened. Board members were already gathering around the long walnut table. Screens displayed financial summaries, quarterly performance, acquisition updates, infrastructure spending. Claire stood near the head of the table, speaking quietly with Daniel. Preston saw her and smiled. "Claire." She turned. "Preston." He walked toward her. For an instant, the diner returned between them, his hand around her wrist, her voice telling him to stop. Ethan standing beside the booth. Preston seemed untouched by the memory. "Good to see you back where you belong." Claire held his gaze. "I was thinking the same thing." Preston smiled. "Your little research project finally over?" "Yes." "Learn anything?" Claire looked at him for a moment. "Quite a lot." Daniel called the meeting to order at 9. 20 people took their seats. Preston sat near the center. Charles occupied a chair behind him. Claire sat at the head of the table, Daniel beside her. The first slide displayed the Whitmore Systems logo. Claire reached for the control panel. "Before we begin the quarterly agenda, there is a matter involving corporate conduct, external partners, and ongoing legal exposure." Preston's expression did not change. Charles's did. Claire pressed a button. The screen went black. Then white text appeared. "Maple Street Diner, Thursday, 1:17 a.m. Nobody spoke. Preston leaned back. "Claire," she continued, "most of you have seen a video circulated online involving a man named Ethan Walker." Several board members nodded. "The public version begins after physical contact has already occurred." Preston looked toward Daniel. Daniel did not look back. Claire continued. "We now have authenticated audio covering the period before, during, and after that recording." Charles stood. "I think we should discuss whether this is appropriate." Daniel turned toward him. "Sit down." Charles hesitated, then slowly returned to his chair. Claire pressed play. At first the speakers carried only diner noise, rain, dishes, the hum of refrigeration. Then Preston's voice. Coffee, fresh. The room listened. No one moved. Claire's voice followed. "Anything else?" A pause. Then Preston. "Maybe." Claire watched the faces around the table. Some looked confused. Others already understood where this was going. The audio continued. "Sir, let go of me." Preston shifted in his chair. Charles leaned toward him. Claire's voice again. "You can talk without holding me." Then Preston. "What's the rush?" A board member near the far end lowered his eyes. Claire's voice hardened through the speakers. "Let go of me." Then again, "You're hurting me." The room changed, not loudly, but completely. The sound of Ethan's chair moving could be heard faintly. Then his voice. "She asked you to let go." Preston stared at Claire. She did not look away. The recording continued. Take your hand off her." Then Preston, "Go finish your coffee." Then Ethan, "Last time, let her go." Grant's voice, movement, impact, a cup breaking. Then Ethan, "Stay still. No shouting, no uncontrolled rage, no attack. Just a man controlling another man's movement." Then Preston's threat, "I can ruin you." The line sounded different in the boardroom, smaller, uglier. "I can make one call and people like you stop getting hired." Claire stopped the recording. Silence filled the room. Preston leaned forward. "This proves nothing." Claire looked at him. "It proves exactly what happened before the edited video. It proves an argument. It proves I asked you to release me. You were upset." I said it 3 times. Preston's jaw tightened. Claire continued. It proves Ethan Walker attempted verbal intervention before anyone touched him. Charles spoke. Audio can be interpreted in many ways. Rachel Torres entered through the conference room door. Every head turned. She carried a single folder. Not this one. Preston stared at her. Who are you? Rachel Torres, counsel for Ethan Walker. Charles stood again. This meeting is becoming inappropriate. Rachel placed the folder on the table. You may want to remain seated. Charles glared at her. Rachel opened the file. The beacon recording has been authenticated by 2 independent digital forensic specialists. She placed 2 reports on the table. Metadata confirms the recording time and location. Then another document. Security logs from Maple Street Diner match the timeline. Another. Medical photographs confirm bruising on Claire Whitmore's wrist consistent with forceful restraint. Preston looked around. The room had stopped belonging to him. He could feel it. Rachel continued. We also have a sworn eyewitness statement from Frank Dawson, who observed the encounter from the diner. She looked toward Preston. Mr. Dawson previously worked in corrections and described Ethan Walker's response as controlled restraint following an attempted physical intervention by your associate. Preston laughed once. A truck driver. Rachel did not react. Yes, the contempt in Preston's voice landed badly. He realized it too late. Claire watched several board members exchange looks. Rachel continued. Mr. Dawson is not the only witness. The screen changed. A video call connected. Hannah Pierce appeared. Preston went still. For the first time that morning, his confidence broke. Only slightly. But Claire saw it. Hannah looked directly into the camera. My name is Hannah Pierce. Preston turned toward Charles. Charles whispered something. Hannah continued. 3 years ago, Preston Vale touched me without permission at a corporate conference. A board member near Preston looked toward him. Hannah described the elevator corridor, the texts, the complaint, the settlement. She did not cry. That somehow made it stronger. When she finished, Rachel spoke. 2 additional women have provided statements describing similar conduct. Preston pushed his chair back. This is an ambush. Claire finally answered. No. She leaned forward. An ambush happens when somebody has no warning. Her voice stayed calm. I warned you in that diner every time I said no. Preston stared at her. Claire continued. You believed I was a waitress. You believed I had no power. You behaved accordingly. Nobody interrupted. And when Ethan stopped you, you did not defend yourself with the truth. You tried to destroy him. Preston's face reddened. That is absurd. Cole Ramirez entered. He placed another set of documents in front of Daniel. Rachel stepped aside. Cole looked at Preston. Northlake Strategic. Preston's eyes flickered. Cole noticed. Your firm has used them before. Charles immediately spoke. Many companies use private security consultants. Cole nodded. True. He displayed an invoice on the screen. Northlake received payment through Vantage Advisory. Then another document. Vantage billed the expense to your firm under reputation risk assessment. Preston said nothing. Cole continued. The invoice number matches. He changed the image. Lucy Walker appeared on the screen walking toward school. The room went silent again. Daniel's face hardened. Claire had seen the image before. It still made her stomach turn. Cole spoke carefully. This photograph was taken by a Northlake contractor. Another image. Lucy entering Ethan's truck. Another. Ethan standing outside the school gate. The contractor's vehicle was documented on 3 separate days. Preston looked toward Charles. Charles had stopped taking notes. Rachel spoke. Lieutenant Mason Reed has already received copies of these records. Preston stood. Daniel, this has gone far enough. Daniel finally looked at him. No. One word. Preston stared. Daniel folded his hands on the table. This went too far when an 8-year-old child became part of your strategy. You do not know that I ordered this. I know your firm paid for it. That is not the same thing. Then explain it to investigators. Preston stepped toward the table. You are willing to blow up years of business because your daughter had an unpleasant night in a diner. Claire's face changed. Not anger. Something colder. She stood. An unpleasant night. Preston realized the mistake. Claire walked around the table slowly. You grabbed a woman because you thought she had no power. You threatened the man who stopped you. You used his medical history to smear him. You helped circulate a version of events that removed the reason he acted. You interfered with his livelihood. You had people photograph his child. Preston shook his head. You cannot prove half of that, Rachel answered. That is why courts exist. Preston looked toward Daniel. Think carefully. Daniel almost smiled. I am. Preston pointed toward the financial documents still displayed on another monitor. My firm is tied into 3 major Whitmore infrastructure partnerships. Daniel nodded. Yes. You terminate those relationships, you damage your own shareholders. Daniel sat back. Do you think I built this company without learning how to survive expensive decisions? Preston's mouth tightened. Daniel continued. Every relationship your firm holds with Whitmore is being reviewed effective immediately. Charles stood. We will sue. Daniel looked at him. I assumed you would. And the board? Daniel glanced around the room. One board member spoke. I support the review. Another nodded. So do I. A third added, given the evidence, continued association is a greater risk. Preston looked from face to face. No one came to him. No one offered a private word. No one asked Claire to reconsider. His money was still there. His influence was not. The conference room door opened. Lieutenant Mason Reed entered with 2 investigators. Preston turned slowly. Mason approached. Mr. Vale. Charles stepped forward. My client will not answer questions without counsel. Mason nodded. That is his right. He looked at Preston. We need you to accompany us regarding an investigation into assault, witness intimidation, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. Preston laughed. It sounded hollow. You are arresting me in a board meeting. Mason's expression remained neutral. I am asking you to come with us. And if I refuse, Mason held his gaze. Then the conversation changes. Preston looked around the room one last time. Perhaps he expected Daniel to intervene. Perhaps he expected Claire to feel embarrassed. Perhaps he expected someone to remember how much money depended on him. Nobody moved. He adjusted his jacket, then walked toward the door. As he passed Claire, he stopped. This is not over. Claire looked at him. For you, I think it finally started. Mason guided him out. The doors closed. For several seconds, the room remained silent. Then Daniel looked toward Claire. Are you all right? Claire stared at the closed doors. No. She looked down at her wrist. The bruising was almost gone. But I will be. The story broke before noon. News alerts appeared across the city. Investor questioned in diner assault and surveillance investigation. Full audio contradicts viral video. Whitmore CEO identified as Waitress in controversial diner incident. By afternoon, the audio had been released publicly through Rachel's office with Claire's consent. The difference was immediate. People heard Claire say no. They heard Ethan warn Preston. They heard Grant move first. They heard Preston threaten Ethan's livelihood. Television stations that had spent days discussing Ethan's mental health suddenly invited legal experts to analyze defensive intervention. The same anchors who once called the footage disturbing now called it misleading. A station issued a correction, another published an apology. Ethan watched none of it live. He was at home making grilled cheese. Lucy sat at the kitchen table, coloring a picture of Jupiter. The television played quietly in the living room. A reporter said Ethan's name. Lucy looked up. Dad. Ethan turned the sandwich. What? They're saying you were right. He glanced toward the television. Sounds dangerous. Lucy frowned. What? Nothing. She left the table and walked toward the screen. The reporter described newly released evidence. Lucy listened, then turned. So everybody knows now. Ethan placed the sandwich on a plate. Enough people. Are you happy? He thought about that. 3 jobs gone. Weeks of fear. A stranger photographing his daughter. His worst years dragged into public view. A dead wife's grief turned into a headline. He looked at Lucy. I'm tired. She considered that, then smiled. That means yes. Ethan laughed. Come eat. His phone rang. Rachel. He answered. Hey. Preston's civil claim is being withdrawn. Ethan looked toward Lucy. That fast? His attorneys have other priorities, Rachel continued. Your security company called me. Ethan's expression hardened. What do they want? You back? No. I assumed. The delivery company called too. No. I also assumed. She paused. 3 other employers contacted me. Ethan leaned against the counter. Why? Because today, you are good publicity. He looked toward the television again. Yesterday unstable, today brave. He felt no satisfaction in either version. Yesterday I was dangerous. Rachel was quiet. Today I'm a hero. The internet likes simple stories. I'm neither. Rachel laughed softly. I know. After they hung up, Ethan looked at Sarah's photograph. For months after she died, he had believed survival meant reducing his life to obligations. Work, bills, Lucy, sleep when possible, repeat. Anything else felt dangerous. Anything that mattered could be lost. The diner had proved him right in the worst possible way. One choice had nearly broken the fragile structure he had spent years rebuilding. Yet when he looked toward the table, Lucy was eating grilled cheese and drawing rings around Jupiter. Safe, laughing, still believing in him. A knock came at the door. Ethan frowned. Lucy looked up. Are you expecting someone? No. He opened it. Claire stood on the porch. No business suit, no cameras, no security visible. She carried a glass baking dish covered in foil. Ethan looked at the dish, then at her. What is that? Claire lifted it slightly. An apology. It looks heavy. It is lasagna. Ethan stared at her. You made lasagna. Claire's expression became defensive. I participated in making lasagna. Lucy appeared behind Ethan. What does that mean? Claire looked past him. It means I had instructions. Lucy smiled. And help? Claire sighed. And help. Ethan stepped aside. Claire entered. For the first time since the night at Maple Street Diner, there was no emergency waiting behind her. No attorney, no recording, no threat. Just a woman standing in Ethan's small kitchen with a questionable lasagna in her hands and rain still clinging to the shoulders of her coat. Lucy took the dish from her. I'll tell you if it's bad. Claire looked at Ethan. She is terrifying. Ethan closed the door. You get used to it. Claire smiled. This time Ethan smiled back. For a moment none of them said anything. The apartment felt different with her standing inside it. Not larger, not brighter. Just different. Lucy carried the lasagna toward the kitchen counter with both hands. It smells good. Claire removed her coat. That is encouraging. Ethan closed the door. Smelling good and tasting good are not legally connected. Claire looked at him. I just helped expose a private equity executive in front of a board of directors. That has nothing to do with lasagna. I feel like it should count for something. Lucy placed the dish on the counter. It counts if the cheese is good. Claire nodded solemnly. Finally, a reasonable person. Ethan watched them. Lucy had known Claire for only a short time yet. Somehow she spoke to her as if Claire had been around for years. Children did that sometimes. Adults built walls. Children walked through the doors. Ethan pulled plates from the cabinet. Claire looked toward the sink. Can I help? Can you? She narrowed her eyes. I know where plates go. You nearly set pasta on fire. Water boiled over. The smoke detector disagreed. Lucy laughed from the counter. Claire pointed at Ethan. You are enjoying this too much. Little bit. They ate at the small kitchen table. The lasagna was not terrible. Lucy announced this after 2 bites. Claire stared at her. Not terrible. That is good. Is it? From me, yes. Ethan hid a smile behind his water glass. Claire looked at him. You created this. I accept no responsibility. Lucy continued eating. For several minutes they talked about ordinary things. School. The science fair. A teacher Lucy liked. A classmate who apparently cheated at kickball. Claire asked questions. Real questions. Not the polite kind adults ask children while waiting to talk about something else. Lucy noticed. Ethan noticed too. Eventually Lucy carried her plate to the sink. Can I watch a movie? Homework done. Yes. Teeth brushed? Lucy stared at him. After dinner. Eventually. That is not the same thing. Ethan pointed toward the hallway. Movie. Lucy disappeared before he changed his mind. The apartment grew quieter. Claire sat across from Ethan. The space between them felt different now that Lucy was gone, less protected. Ethan folded his hands on the table. You said the lasagna was an apology. Claire looked down at her plate. Partly. For what? For assuming I understood your life because I spent a few months working in a diner. Ethan did not answer. Claire continued. I thought I was being brave. She gave a small laugh. I rented a small apartment. I wore a uniform. I took orders from people who had no idea who I was. She looked toward the refrigerator. Bills still sat beneath a magnet near Lucy's calendar. But every night I knew I could stop. Her eyes returned to Ethan. If rent became a problem, I did not have a rent problem. If my car broke down, I did not have a transportation problem. If I got sick, I did not have to choose between missing a shift and losing money. Ethan leaned back. I was angry when you came here. I know. I thought the diner was some kind of experiment to you. It was. Claire did not soften the answer. That is the part I am ashamed of. Ethan studied her. You do not have to be ashamed of wanting to understand people. No. Claire looked down. But I do have to be honest about the difference between visiting someone else's reality and living in it. Ethan said nothing for several seconds. Then he nodded once. That is fair. Claire looked relieved, not forgiven, but heard. Ethan stood and carried their plates toward the sink. Claire followed him. I also owe you another apology. He glanced over his shoulder. This one come with dessert? No. Then I am less interested. She almost smiled. I should have told you who I was sooner. You did not know me. That did not stop you from helping me. Ethan turned off the water. Those are different things. Why? Because you did not owe me your biography. He looked at her. You were scared. You needed help. That was enough. Claire went still. Those words landed harder now than they had in the diner. Maybe because she finally understood them. Ethan had not stepped toward her because she was connected to power. He had stepped toward her when she appeared to have none. Claire looked toward the living room. Lucy had fallen asleep halfway through the movie. Her head rested against the arm of the couch. One sock had disappeared again. Claire smiled. Does she always lose one sock? Constantly. Where do they go? No one knows. Your company builds warehouse tracking systems. Maybe we finally found our next product. Ethan laughed quietly. Then he lifted Lucy from the couch. She stirred against his chest. Movie over. Apparently. I was watching. With your eyes closed. Listening. Claire watched Ethan carry her toward the hallway. The ease with which he held Lucy told a story all by itself. This was not performance. No one was watching him on the difficult mornings. No cameras followed him when he packed lunches. No applause arrived when he stayed awake with a feverish child or showed up tired to school events after working through the night. He simply did it. Every day. When Ethan returned, Claire was standing near the wall where several photographs hung. One showed Ethan in uniform. Another showed him kneeling beside Lucy when she was much younger. And one showed Sarah. Claire looked away when he entered. Ethan noticed. That is Sarah. Claire glanced back at the photograph. Your wife? Yeah. Sarah stood in a yellow dress beside a lake. Her hair moved across her face in the wind. She looked toward Ethan instead of the camera. That was what Claire noticed first, the way she looked at him. She was beautiful. Ethan nodded. She hated pictures. Claire smiled. That one is good. It was one of about 50. He walked closer. She kept blinking on purpose because she wanted to go home. Claire looked at him. There was warmth in his voice. Pain, too, but not only pain. What was she like? Ethan seemed surprised by the question. Most people asked how she died. Cancer, treatment, how long, how old. Claire had asked who she was. Ethan looked at the photograph again. She laughed when she was angry. Claire smiled. That seems inconvenient. It was. He paused. She loved old movies. She hated folding laundry. She could remember every birthday, but never where she put her keys. His smile grew. She believed every problem could be fixed after enough coffee. Claire leaned against the wall. I think I would have liked her. Ethan nodded. Probably. His hand touched the chain beneath his shirt. Claire saw the movement. The ring. Ethan pulled the chain free. His wedding band rested against his palm. Could not wear it at work after a while. Claire looked at him. Do you still think of yourself as married? Ethan did not answer quickly. Some days. Claire nodded. No judgment, no disappointment. Ethan looked at her. You are not going to tell me I should move on. No. Most people do. I think people say that because grief makes them uncomfortable. Ethan's eyes stayed on her. Claire continued. If somebody mattered enough to change your life, I do not think pretending they stopped mattering is healing. Ethan swallowed. He looked back at Sarah's photograph. You sound like her. Good or bad? Still deciding. Claire smiled. The silence that followed was not awkward. That was rare for both of them. Claire finally moved toward the couch. My turn. Ethan sat across from her. Your turn for what? You showed me part of your life. She clasped her hands together. I should probably stop hiding behind mine. Ethan waited. Claire looked toward the window. My father loves me. I never doubted that. He also spent most of my childhood building a company. She smiled faintly. Sometimes I think he remembers quarterly earnings from 2004 more clearly than my 8th birthday. Ethan said nothing. He gave me every opportunity a person could want. Schools, travel, tutors, connections. And because of that, people decided there was no acceptable reason for me to ever feel lonely. She looked down. That is a strange thing about money. People think it cancels pain. Ethan nodded. Does it? It cancels some problems. Claire looked at him. I would never pretend otherwise. But it does not tell you whether somebody likes you or likes being near what your name can give them. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Claire continued. At 23, I dated someone for almost a year. He talked about my father constantly. At first, I thought he was trying to connect with me. Then I found emails. Her mouth tightened. He had been asking people in his firm how to position himself for business with Whitmore. Ethan's expression changed. That is rough, Claire laughed once. Very romantic. So you stopped trusting people. I got better at evaluating them. That is not what I asked. Claire looked at him, then nodded. Yes. Ethan understood that more than he wanted to. Sarah's death had taught him something similar. Not that people were untrustworthy. That attachment itself could become dangerous. If you loved something enough, losing it could tear the floor out from under your life. Claire leaned back. That is why being Maya felt strange. Nobody cared who Maya was connected to. Nobody wanted anything from Maya. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Preston wanted something. Claire looked at him. Poor wording. He smiled. She did too. Then Claire's expression softened. You treated me exactly the same before and after you knew who I was. Not exactly. No. I am more afraid of your cooking now. Claire threw a couch pillow at him. Ethan caught it. They both froze for half a second. Then Ethan laughed. Claire laughed too. It was not romantic in any dramatic way. No music, no sudden confession. Just two adults in a small apartment laughing after weeks of fear. Sometimes intimacy arrived quietly. 2 mornings later, Ethan received a call from Daniel Whitmore's office. He almost ignored it. Claire had not mentioned anything. That made him suspicious immediately. At 10:30, Ethan walked through the main entrance of Whitmore Systems, wearing the only suit he owned. It had been purchased for Sarah's funeral. He had not worn it since. The jacket felt too tight across his shoulders. The lobby felt too clean. Glass walls, stone floors. People carrying tablets and coffee cups that probably cost more than the coffee at Maple Street Diner for a week. A receptionist escorted him upstairs. Daniel Whitmore's office overlooked the city. Claire was already there. So was Cole Ramirez. Ethan stopped near the door. You knew about this? Claire nodded. I knew there was a meeting. What kind? Daniel stood. The kind where you sit down. Ethan glanced at Claire. Your father always this friendly. Actually, this is progress. Daniel almost smiled. Ethan sat. A folder rested on the table. He did not touch it. Daniel began. "I owe you an apology." Ethan looked at him. Daniel continued. "When Claire told me about you, I assumed you would eventually seek compensation." Ethan said nothing. "I had Cole investigate you." Ethan's eyes moved toward Cole. Cole did not look uncomfortable. He had probably been stared at by worse men. Ethan looked back at Daniel. "What did you find?" Daniel answered. "A man working too much." Claire glanced down to hide a smile. Daniel continued. "A father who has not missed a school conference in 3 years. A veteran who attends therapy regularly. A man who visits his wife's grave. A man who refused $75,000 when taking it would have been reasonable." Ethan's face hardened slightly. "You had no right to investigate my daughter." Daniel nodded. "You're correct." The immediate admission surprised Ethan. Daniel continued. "I was wrong." Ethan looked at Claire. She was watching her father, too. Maybe those words surprised her even more. Daniel pushed the folder forward. "This is not compensation." Ethan did not reach for it. "Then what is it? A job offer?" Ethan stared at him. "No," Claire spoke. "Read it first." "I do not want a ceremonial position. It is not ceremonial. I am not becoming some corporate mascot because your company needs a good story." Claire leaned forward. "That is exactly why we did not announce anything." Ethan looked at her. She continued. "Open the folder." He did. The first page read, "Director of Workplace Response and Intervention." Ethan looked up. Claire explained. "We are creating a workplace safety initiative. Not just software. Training. Reporting systems. De-escalation. Bystander intervention. Management response are frontline worker protections." Cole spoke. "We have security professionals. We have compliance professionals. What we do not have is enough people who understand how quickly fear changes a room." Ethan looked at the document again. Claire continued. "You recognized that situation before anyone else did. You tried words first. You controlled the physical response. You stopped when the threat stopped. Those are teachable skills." Ethan looked at Daniel. "What is the catch?" Daniel answered. "You work for a living." "That is the catch." Ethan almost smiled. The salary was more money than he had ever made in one job. Benefits, retirement, health insurance, paid time off, flexible hours. Ethan stopped at that line. "Flexible around school schedules?" Claire nodded. "That was non-negotiable." Ethan looked at her. "You put that in, 'I know your boss.' You have leverage." Lucy came to mind. School pickup, science fairs, dinner before bedtime, weekends not carved into pieces by 3 employers. Ethan closed the folder. "I need time." Daniel nodded. "Take it." Claire said nothing. That helped more than any argument could have. That night, Ethan placed the folder on the kitchen table. Lucy stared at it while eating cereal. "Is that the new job?" "Maybe." "How many jobs?" "1." She stopped chewing. "Just one." "Just one." "No night security?" "No." "No. Deliveries?" "No." "No fixing toilets for people?" Ethan frowned. "I've fixed more than toilets." Lucy put down her spoon. "Will you be home for dinner?" Ethan looked at the folder. "Most nights." She stood and hugged him. No discussion of salary, no questions about title. Just one thing mattered: time. Ethan closed his eyes and held her. His answer was decided before she let go. He started 3 weeks later. The first days were difficult. Not because Ethan could not do the job, because offices had their own combat language. Stakeholder alignment, scalable frameworks, risk matrices. Ethan hated all of it. During his first planning meeting, someone used the phrase human capital 3 times. Ethan finally interrupted. "You mean employees?" The room went quiet. "Yes?" "Then say employees." Claire covered a smile with her coffee cup. Ethan changed the program quickly. He insisted frontline workers be included in every training design session. Janitors, warehouse workers, drivers, receptionists, restaurant staff, nurses, security guards. People who understood what policies looked like after they left executive documents and entered real rooms. Rachel joined as outside legal counsel. Cole helped develop response protocols. Nina handled communications, but only after Ethan made her promise the program would not become a campaign about him. I am serious. So am I. No giant posters with my face. Was not planning it. No slogans. Nina paused. That hurts. Nina, fine. The first major training session was held at Maple Street Diner. Claire chose the location. Ethan resisted, then agreed. The diner owner moved tables after closing. Managers from several Whitmore facilities sat beside cooks, warehouse supervisors, human resources staff drivers, and service workers. Frank Dawson sat in the third row with his son. Hannah Pierce sat near the front. Rachel stood near the counter. Claire remained toward the back. Ethan stood beside booth 7. The same booth. The vinyl seat had been repaired. The table still carried a small mark where Grant's belt buckle had struck it. Ethan looked around the room. How many of you think intervention starts when a situation becomes physical? Several hands rose. Ethan nodded. That is usually too late. He walked toward the booth. Intervention starts when somebody says no. The room became still. It starts when a customer humiliates an employee. When a supervisor corners somebody. When a coworker makes a threat everyone pretends was a joke. When somebody says stop and the room decides whether to hear it. Frank looked down. Ethan saw him. He continued, most people freeze. That does not make them bad. It makes them human. Frank looked up. The important part is what happens after you realize you froze. Ethan taught them verbal interruption. Distance, positioning, calling for help, documenting behavior, keeping ego out of conflict. He demonstrated how to create space without escalating aggression. He taught security staff that restraint was not punishment. He taught managers that silence from employees did not always mean safety. He taught workers that asking for help was not weakness. At the end, Frank waited until the room cleared. His son stood beside him. Frank approached Ethan. I should have helped you that night. Ethan looked at him. You did. Later. Still counts. Frank shook his head. It does not feel like it. Ethan glanced at Frank's son, then back at him. You cannot change where you froze. You can change what you do after. Frank nodded slowly. His son placed a hand on his shoulder. That seemed to matter more than Ethan's answer. Months passed. The media found new stories. Preston's legal problems continued without Ethan watching every update. Charges moved through the courts. Civil claims followed. Several women who had once stayed silent joined Hannah. Preston's firm lost clients. But Ethan stopped measuring his recovery by Preston's decline. That was another kind of prison. His life became smaller in the best possible way. Breakfast with Lucy, work, dinner, homework, weekends, sleep, real sleep. Claire became part of those ordinary hours gradually. She attended Lucy's science fair. Lucy built a new volcano. This one stood perfectly straight. Ethan looked disappointed. It lacks character. Lucy rolled her eyes. Claire bought 3 tickets to the school fundraiser and lost all of them in a raffle. She accused Ethan of rigging it. He reminded her he did not control elementary school raffles. Claire burned pancakes in Ethan's kitchen. Again, Lucy stood beside the stove. You are CEO of a technology company. Claire looked at the blackened pancake. These skills are unrelated. Lucy sighed. I'll teach you. One Sunday, Ethan took Lucy to Sarah's grave. Claire drove them. When they arrived, she stayed in the car. Ethan opened the door. You coming? Claire looked surprised. I thought you might want privacy. Ethan glanced toward Lucy, who was already carrying yellow flowers. We did. He looked back at Claire. Now, we're asking you. Claire stepped out. She did not say much at the grave. Neither did Ethan. Lucy told Sarah about school, about the new job, about Claire's terrible pancakes. Claire laughed quietly. Ethan looked at Sarah's name carved into stone. For the first time, letting someone new stand there did not feel like betrayal. It felt like allowing his life to keep moving while still carrying what came before. Winter became spring. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan, Claire, and Lucy walked along the Scioto River. Lucy rode her bicycle ahead of them. No training wheels. She had insisted she was ready. Ethan had disagreed. Lucy had won. She wobbled through a turn. Eyes forward, Ethan called. I know. You are looking at ducks. I can do both. No, you cannot. Claire smiled. She gets that from you. I do not ride bikes into ducks. You know what I mean. They walked in silence for a while. Claire slipped her hands into her coat pockets. Do you ever think about that night? Ethan watched Lucy. Sometimes. If you had stayed in the booth? He smiled slightly. I would have made it to work on time. Claire laughed. Then she looked at him. I'm serious. So am I. She waited. Ethan watched Lucy circle back toward them. Then his expression softened. I think about what I would want somebody to do if it were her. Claire followed his eyes. Lucy rode past them, too fast. Ethan raised his voice. Slow down. I am fine. Claire smiled. Ethan continued quietly. If I had stayed seated, I would have spent the rest of my life hoping someone else would stand up when Lucy needed them. Claire looked at him. So you never regretted it? Of course I regretted parts of it. That is not the same thing. No, he looked at her. I regretted what it cost her. What it cost you. The fear. But I never regretted standing. Claire nodded. They kept walking. After several steps, her hand brushed his. Neither reacted. Then it happened again. This time, Claire let her fingers stay beside his. Ethan looked down. Claire looked ahead. He slowly closed his hand around hers. No speech, no question. Claire's fingers tightened. Ahead of them, Lucy turned her bicycle around. She saw their hands. Her face changed instantly. Ethan recognized the expression. Don't. Lucy widened her eyes. I did not say anything. Your face did. Claire laughed. Lucy rode closer. I was just going to ask about pizza. Sure, I was. What kind? Pepperoni. Ethan looked at Claire. She has good taste. Claire looked at their joined hands. Debatable. Lucy made a disgusted noise and rode ahead. Ethan watched her go, then looked at Claire. You know she is going to tell everyone. Everyone who... Mrs. Alvarez, her teacher, the mailman. Claire smiled. I can survive bad press. Apparently. They continued walking. 1 year after the night at Maple Street Diner, a small sign appeared beside the register. The diner owner had paid for it himself. It read, If someone says stop, we listen. If someone needs help, we act. No one stands alone here. The coffee was still bad. The neon sign still flickered. Frank still stopped in during late routes. The cook still turned the radio too loud. But the place carried the memory differently now. Not as the place where something terrible happened. As the place where silence finally broke. Whitmore Systems expanded the workplace response program across its facilities. Then other companies asked for it. Ethan refused every attempt to name it after him. Claire stopped trying after the third argument. Rachel continued representing workers who could not afford powerful legal teams. Hannah began speaking at training sessions. Frank volunteered twice a month. Daniel attended one session and sat quietly in the back. Ethan noticed him, said nothing. Afterward, Daniel approached. You were right about the phrase human capital. Ethan looked at him. Only took you a year. Daniel almost smiled. At home, Ethan still packed Lucy's lunch every morning. That ritual never changed. One Tuesday, Claire stood at the counter drinking coffee while Ethan made a turkey sandwich. He cut it into triangles. Claire watched. Why triangles? She says they taste better. Scientifically impossible. Tell her. I value my safety. Ethan placed the sandwich into Lucy's lunchbox. Claire looked toward him. You know something. That opening usually cost me money. She smiled. That night at the diner. Ethan closed the lunchbox. You thought you were helping a waitress. I was helping a waitress. Claire leaned against the counter. You still think of it that way? Ethan looked at her. What else were you... Claire smiled. For a moment she was back beneath the flickering lights of Maple Street Diner. No boardroom, no company, no last name people recognized. Just a woman asking someone to let go. Ethan had not known she could protect his reputation. He had not known she could give his experience a new purpose. He had not known she would become someone Lucy waited for at the dinner table. Someone whose hand he would reach for without thinking. Someone he would eventually learn to trust with the pieces of himself he had kept locked away since Sarah died. He had known only one thing. She needed help. Ethan zipped the lunchbox closed. Lucy ran into the kitchen carrying one shoe. "Where is the other one?" Ethan asked. "I do not know. You had 2 yesterday. Things change." Claire laughed. Ethan looked at her, then at Lucy, then toward the photograph of Sarah still hanging on the wall. Nothing had been replaced. That mattered. Sarah was still part of the house, part of Lucy, part of him. Love had not erased grief. A new life had not required destroying the old one. It had simply grown around it. Lucy found her second shoe beneath the couch. Claire grabbed her coat. Ethan picked up the lunchbox. Outside morning light stretched across the street. The day waiting for them was ordinary. School, work, dinner, maybe burnt pancakes if Claire got ambitious. There had been a time when Ethan thought ordinary meant small. Now he understood how much courage it sometimes took to build an ordinary life and keep choosing it. He locked the door behind them. Lucy ran toward the car. Claire reached for Ethan's hand. He took it. No cameras watched. No one applauded. There was nothing heroic about the moment. That was exactly why Ethan loved it. At Maple Street Diner, he had not stood up because Claire Whitmore was powerful. He stood because Maya Reed was not. He had not protected a CEO. He had protected a stranger. And somewhere between a rainy diner, a frightened daughter, a damaged reputation, and a second chance, neither of them expected that stranger had become part of his family. Ethan Walker never wanted to be remembered as the man who saved someone important. If anyone asked him about that night, he usually corrected them. She was not important because she was a CEO. Then he would look toward Claire, toward Lucy, toward the life built from choices that once seemed impossibly small. She was important because she was a person, and to Ethan that had always been enough.